Hey now, I've been all grain homebrewing since 2009 and it has been quite a journey. However, one of the things that I found was key in producing consistent, high quality homebrew was temperature control with my fermentations. Now, I always use temperature controllers and I've typically used terrarium heat wraps just to basically ensure that my homebrew is at the proper fermentation temperature. However, I saw this online the other day and decided to pick this up. This is the Inkbird Plus Brewing and Fermentation Heat Pad. It's a 25-watt heat pad that just sits underneath the carboy, and you can, or kombucha vessel, or if you're trying to germinate plants, or you're fermenting homemade wine, whatever, it just sits underneath and the heat radiates up and should control it. I'm really interested to see how this works, because if it works as well as my heat wraps, well, this is a lot easier than trying to tape those things on and remove them and all of that. So let's try it out. So down here in the brewery, I've got this set up. I've got the Inkbird Plus brewing and fermentation pad set up right here. I'm actually going to be running this with the Inkbird ITC 308 temperature controller. You can see that I've just got it all set up here, and that's plugged into the heating plug on this. So right now, because I have my set point at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's 71, this heating pad should be engaged, and I can feel it is starting to warm up here. So I just want to see how this works out sort of in comparison to my heating wraps that I typically use. Just taking a look at, I guess, the ambient counter temperature here. We're talking like high 60s Fahrenheit. Taking a peek here. Wow, we're actually hitting like, high 90s, 100 degree Fahrenheit. So we are running a good 30 Fahrenheit above the temperature surrounding it. So that's actually just a little bit warmer, I'd say, than those terrarium heat wraps get me. So I'm really curious to see how this will work with the carboys. So having this plugged in, you can feel that it's definitely warm. However, it's certainly not uncomfortable, and it's not going to be any sort of a safety concern. You wouldn't burn yourself or anything like that on this. So that's great. Now, this is future me, because I have a little bit more hair than in the rest of the video. Interrupting myself here just to mention that the Inkbird Plus heat mat that I picked up apparently is only available in Canada. I was looking around on like Amazon.com and whatnot and couldn't find it there. However, I did find what appears to be an identical heat mat. It's from Full Warm. It's just slightly different branding. I'm sure that's the situation. I did link that in the video description, as well as there are different options out there. A bunch of these like 25-watt heat mats, and some of them actually do come with built-in thermostats as well, because you for sure want to have some sort of temperature control with this. If you've got existing temperature controllers, this is awesome just to plug in like you'll see me do. But if you don't have one and you just want to get an all-in-one unit, you can certainly get that as well. So if this is of interest to you, have fun shopping. So I just finished running off the wort for this Belgian Saison homebrew that I brewed today here. This is my session lower alcohol version of my Saison. Really love this recipe here. So I did just run off that wort. And you can see I have 68 degrees Fahrenheit here, which is fairly close to the 75 that I'm targeting for the startup of fermentation. Now, I'm going to see how long that takes. I also have on my second carboy here, because I did fill 2 of them, I've got this terrarium heat wrap, which is what I typically use on my carboys. I'm just curious to see how that compares insofar as actually heating up to my pitching temp. So we're obviously here at High Krausen with this Belgian Saison. It's fermenting away quite happily. My fermentation temperature here is maintaining right around that 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is fantastic. Now this heating pad definitely worked to heat up to the fermentation temperature. One thing I noticed though is that it was definitely slower at doing so than my terrarium heat wrap that I have going on this other carboy. When I went to actually pitch last night, the one with the terrarium heat wrap was at 75 and I was at 73 and change here with this one, so it was a little bit slower. I imagine that it would probably be a bit quicker had I put like a shirt or a towel around this just to trap a little bit more of that heat. However, I was really interested in seeing how it operated just on its own. I mean, I do really like the fact that I don't need to tape anything onto this carboy here. All I had to do was set it down and it's doing the work here for me. So that's really nice. It just cleans things up, makes it a little bit easier to see exactly what's going on here. And then I don't really have to remove anything when I'm done. I can just pop the carboy off. Now, as this is a Belgian Saison, I do want to ferment it warm, so I have ramped the temperature up to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. I found by wrapping this towel around it here, things were a little bit more efficient and was just able to heat up to the temperature a little bit more quickly, which completely makes sense because, I mean, otherwise we're only heating directly from the bottom, but this helped sort of trap the heat in there a little bit more, and that makes this heat pad work really quite effectively. Of course, having this towel on here, it does restrict the view a little bit of what's going on inside the fermentation. However, it's easy enough just to pull it aside and honestly with the heat wraps that I have on my other carboy here, it does also sort of impact the view of it anyway, so this is great. I found it was really quite efficient at maintaining temperatures, particularly these warmer temperatures here of 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what I was using just to wrap up fermentation on this Belgian Saison. Now that I'm done fermentation, all I need to do is disconnect the heating pad by unplugging it from my Inkbird temperature controller. Now that this yeast has had a few days with the heat turned off, some of that yeast has been able to flocculate out, so it's time to transfer off. Now with the carboy all emptied out, I am ready to move this off, but first I thought I would point out that one thing I found really handy with this was as I was hitting the end of transferring this out, and I like to tip my carboy on an angle here, this mat provided some additional resistance to this sliding. So it was actually a lot easier for me to hold this in position effortlessly, so another bonus to this. And so, there we are. Carboy moved, I can clean that, and perhaps the best part of this, there was no tape to clean off of my carboy. I can simply take this heat mat, store it, and it's ready for the next time I need it. After testing it out through the fermentation of that Belgian Saison homebrew, I do have to say that I am fairly impressed with that Inkbird heat mat. I find that, first of all, it's incredibly easy to use. Just set it down, make sure it's plugged in, set up your carboy right on top of it. There's no mucking around with wrapping a heat belt around it or anything like that. Or, I mean, really taking a look at my terrarium heat wraps, having to use either bungee cords or vinyl tape or something like that on it just to hold it on. So it's far less of a hassle. When I'm done, all I have to do is just pick the carboy up off of it and we're done. It works really well with that temperature controller. I always recommend using a temperature controller and being able to really dial in those fermentation temperatures. I found that's been one of the best things that I've been doing for my brewing. In comparing this to heat belts that I've used before, my terrarium heat wraps, I really do prefer this heat pad, so I might have to be getting a little bit more of those for the future. So there you have it, my 2 cents on that heat pad there, and until next time, keep brewing and fermentations and temperatures and all that stuff at 11.